Building on the panel that you have here at TPM, looking at the adoption of AI in the logistics space, what are your thoughts on the potential versus reality?
There was a study released a couple months ago by Anthropic, which has one of the main AI on the market called Claude. And so they were analyzing for every market of the industry in the US, the delta between the percentage of the US worker that this industry represents and their adoption to like Claude, so the Anthropic AI. And so it's really interesting how you see the gap between transportation and logistics and the rest of other industries. So for example, if you take like computer science, they only represent 3% of the US worker population, but 33% use AI in every day and interact with Claude for their communication. When you look at just media and like entertainment industries in general, 9% of the workforce and 7% of like AI adoption. And then you look at logistics and transportation, where it's like 9.5% of the total US workforce and 0.3% of AI adoption. So this is a real question, like are we falling behind as an industry or are we catching up? And definitely hope we're catching up, and BlueCargo is one of the solutions to like bring AI to this market because it has so much potential. Second data is like the McKinsey case study. They identified that between now and 2030, AI technology can bring 1.5 trillion of efficiency to the supply chain industry globally. And that really makes sense when you think about it, because supply chain is like this suite of like operational tasks and processes and a lot of manual processes, and it needs to work 24/7, and you work with countries at the other side of the globe, so it's 24/7. So it's like the perfect use case for AI application. So there's huge potential. To talk about one example, because this is the one I know the most, but freight audit processes in general. For me, this is the best use case of how to start applying AI, because every piece of the process is something you can build an AI agent to do. So starting with like document processing, so being able to extract the data and read and understand structured or unstructured data, going into the actual invoice auditing, then into dispute resolution, and then into like allocation of the responsibility for the fee. So all those steps are what we can automate with AI. So at BlueCargo, for example, we launched in 2018. Sam Altman, for example, the founder of OpenAI, left Y Combinator, the incubator that he was the president of, in 2019 to start working on ChatGPT and OpenAI. And then really like the LLM came out in 2022, where we started like really incorporating. So actually BlueCargo was part of the 2018 Y Combinator batch. So Sam Altman was the president of YC when we were there. So kind of a fun fact. But so we've always been looking at like, what is the AI technology? My co-founder has a degree in machine learning. That's what she always did. And how do we build AI native and create the first vertical SaaS applying AI to the logistics industry? And there's like huge potential, and how we do it differently from the ground up.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about AI related to sort of a slow adoption?
That's a great question. I see different mindsets. I think I see in the industry a lot of people just like being really used to the way they do things, and maybe being afraid about having like all this conception of like, will AI replace humans? Where it's really like AI is going to be the workhorse to like empower superhumans. And so AI by itself is not going to replace humans, but humans with AI are going to replace humans without AI.
What are the metrics that BlueCargo uses to measure the value that you're bringing to clients?
So for the context, BlueCargo is really a freight audit and freight spend management company. So we have three main indicators that are easy to understand the value, but it's like, one, freight audit should deliver automation in like auditing the invoices. The second is like savings. So actually being able to like find every error or discrepancy in the invoices, there's this sentence from a British politician from the 16th century, but that I really love. And it says, take care about the pens and the pounds will take care of themselves. So that's really the mindset in like having a freight audit. It's like, there's no threshold, there's nothing that goes under the radar. You know that you're on top of like respecting all your contracts. And the third one is like strategic insights and intelligence. So basically being able to like surface vendor scorecarding and all those pieces of data that are really important when you go to the table on like your renewal conversations and negotiations. And there's this math I really love. So if you take an average like BCO or shipper in the industry, average gross profit margin is around 8%. And so with that 8% gross profit margin, basically $1 saved in procurement is the equivalent of $12 of net new sales. So when you think about it, finding solutions that get you that $1 back is maybe easier in some cases than doing 12 in net new sales. So those are the three buckets that we measure. So average is like 6% savings on total freight spend. So math is easy to do. When you're the head of supply chain at a company and you know how much you're spending, just take 6% of that cost back. And what amount of money does that represent? Another customer, we help them reduce the gap between their accruals and the actual by 25%. So it's like if you have 25% of the cash flow that is not idling in, you can actually invest it, make it profitable, or give more shareholder value back. So that's all the value of having a strategic partner, basically managing freight spend.
The company is clearly moving beyond just freight audit. What else makes you unique? Can you describe your customer a little bit more? Just tell us a little bit about that, how you work hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. So our customers are basically BCOs and logistics service providers. So on the BCO side, we already represent 10% of the latest JOC Top 100 list with customer names like GE Appliances, Hasbro, Cardinal Health, $1 Million Baby. So from really like the biggest shippers in the US to like mid-market shippers bringing a few thousand containers. And on the LSP side, same, we work with one of the top 5 freight forwarder, NVO in the US, and companies like STG Logistics or NFI. So that's the mix of our customers. And where BlueCargo is really unique is that, again, it's called freight audit because that's the name of the market today, but I don't really love this name, and it's not what we're doing in the sense that we didn't come from like the financial perspective, we came from the operational world. So, and we realized there was a huge gap between like the freight pay processes that companies have and what's happening in the operations room. Because basically when you're in the freight pay area, you're looking at rates and dates, matching the bill, okay to pay. But that doesn't say anything about what happened to the container. So we audit against every milestone of the life cycle of the container, and we can audit with the data of the life cycle of the container. And this is where BlueCargo is unique, because we bridge the gap between operations and finance working together to tell the real story of the container. So, for example, was the port terminal open on that specific day? Like when you're supposed to have 3 days before paying demurrage, was the port terminal actually open and giving you appointments and slots for like demurrage during those 3 days? Because if there was no availability during those 3 days, then you should have 3 days more and not be paying demurrage during that time. So that's all the data that we've basically laid the foundations down to connect with those data sources providers on our end and bring that data to the audit. And so this is also where AI helps a lot. We ingest the data and the data where it lives, whether it's like Excel's, EDI, ERP systems, but we bring our own data from the operational foundation level that we've set up. So integrations with port terminals throughout the US, integrations with rail ramps, and we actually work with 3,000 dredge trucking companies in the US, and some of them, and the biggest of them, integrated straight to their TMS. So we actually know what's really happening to the container so that we can audit the most complex fees. And that's really where BlueCargo is completely different, is that there's no more exception queue, there's nothing that is complex anymore, because we were built for the container supply chain. We come from the international operations side, and so we can bring visibility into accessorial fees, chassis split, bobtail, detention, demurrage, like all the complex fees that generally end up in the manual review queue. 1/3 of the international freight spend is on accessorial fees, things that you didn't plan for and that are a complete black box to customer. Is there another industry where like 1/3 of what you spend is a completely black box for you as a company? Like, you know, if I was a CFO, I would want to know what's happening to that bucket. And so that's really where we're different and what we bring to the table.
What are your recommendations for shippers who are considering incorporating AI? Not sure where to start.
Just a few things to start is set up a budget, an experimental budget, because you don't want to miss out, you don't want to be catching up, you want to be proactive. So set up a budget for that. Then draw out like what are the top 10 initiatives that AI would be a best tool to leverage to accomplish those goals. So I just gave one example on like how freight audit works, the different steps of the process, and why it's like best case application for AI. But what are the top 10 in your company that you would want to adopt and try and start piloting? So this is where don't fall into common pitfalls, which is like, okay, I need to hire an army of PhDs that can build LLM themselves. No, you don't have to do that. Like OpenAI plus Microsoft are like investing 25 billion just this year plan into building the best LLMs. There's new ones coming. There's Anthropic, there's DeepSeek, like there's newcomers in the market. So just use what the company that are building the LLMs are using. And then work with companies that are innovative, are built on AI, but already have some traction and use cases. So like, for example, what I mentioned, look for a company that has a few logos, so you know it's going to be working and not just like completely experimental. And from that standpoint, what I like the most about thinking about AI is like, what are the use cases that are inevitable? And like adopting a mindset of what is inevitable. Because when you think about it, like, yes, of course, like AR is going to be automated and it's going to be an AI doing that. So it's inevitable. So then the question is like, do you do it tomorrow or do you do it in 3 years? But if there's an ROI for it, which is where you always have to prove, then it's better to be at the forefront now than to be catching up on the game.
Alexandra, thank you so much for taking time to sit down with me, especially during a busy TPM.
Thank you so much for having me.